Hello and welcome to this lesson on intents in the Android system. In this part of the lesson, we will cover an introduction to intents and how to pass data between activities by bundling data inside of these intents. Intents in Android are an abstract description of an operation to be performed. They can be used with start activity to launch an activity, broadcast intent to send it to an interested broadcast receiver component, and start service or bind service to communicate with a background service. This allows us to easily prepare for an action, to start a new activity for instance. We simply need to prepare the appropriate intent and call the start activity method, passing it that prepared intent. Passing data with intents is also convenient and simple in the Android system. Intents come with a built-in component called a bundle or extras, which can contain additional information to be passed to the new activity, service, or other Android component. This data can consist of simple integers or strings, or more complex objects like arrays or parseables. In this example, we see how to pass and receive data through an intent. On the left side, the intent is created and action of send is added to the intent. We then call the putExtra method, which adds an extra to the intent bundle of data. In this case, the extra has the key of intent.extraText and contains a string text message. On the right side, we see the code from the receiving activity. In the onCreate method, we can simply call getIntent, getExtras, getString with the key intent.extraString, and we will receive the string passed from the previous activity. Now let's take a closer look at the intents and see how to implement them in code in Android Studio. We have started a new project called Intents with a blank activity, main activity, and layout activity main.xml. We then create a second activity by creating a new blank activity through right-clicking on our package and selecting New Activity, Blank Activity. We name the new activity Second Activity with layout activity second.xml. If we open our Android manifest, we can see that both the main activity and the second activity were added to our manifest automatically since we created them using our activity generating guide. If we jump over to our main activity, we can see that we added to our onCreate the creation of an intent referencing our second activity. We then put the string extra with the key intent extra text. This is main activity. And finally, we start the activity by calling the method startActivity with the newly created intent. This will mean that we will start the second activity immediately upon starting the first activity. In the second activity, in our onCreate, we grab the string by calling getIntent, getExtras, getString with the constant intent extra text, and then we display that in a toast. If we run the application, we see that the second activity is started and the toast is shown. But what happened to the first activity? It is still in our activity stack, and if we press the back button, we can return to that first activity. In the next part of this lesson, we will cover the different types of intents and how we can declare what type of intents an activity should receive. In this part of the lesson, we will cover the different types of intents as well as intent filters for implicit intents. There are two types of intents, explicit and implicit. Explicit intents specify the component to start by name, the fully classified class name that is. You'll typically use an explicit intent to start a component in your app because you know the class name of the activity or service you want to start. For example, start a new activity in response to user action, or start a service to download a file in the background. Although sometimes implicit intents can be used to start an activity not in your application, from a reference library for instance, implicit intents do not name a specific component, but instead declare a general action to perform, which allows a component from another app to handle it. For example, if you want to show the user a location on a map, you can use an implicit intent to request that another capable app show a specified location on a map. These other applications declare what type of intents they would like to receive via intent filters, which we will get to shortly. We can see a simple example of an explicit intent here. If you notice, it is very similar to the example we used previously in Android Studio. You can create the intent with a context parameter and the class of the desired activity to open. Then the activity can be started by calling start activity. In this example, we call from our main activity and we call a second activity through the intent and start it through the main activity. Intent filters are definitions in an app component declared in the Android manifest that define what type of intents this app component can receive. The Android system will then deliver implicit intents to this app component based on the component filter's action, data, and category attributes. This will sometimes require user interaction to declare which application should receive the implicit intent. Some of the attributes that can be defined in an intent filter can be the action, or what intent action this component can handle and should receive, the types of data this component can receive via the intent filter, for instance, your eyes or MIME types. This can be used, for instance, for opening your application when someone tries to navigate to your website. The category that the filter can accept. Please note that in order to receive implicit intents, you must include the category default category in the intent filter. The methods startActivity and startActivity4Result treat all intents as if they declare the category default category. If you do not declare this category in your intent filter, no implicit intents will resolve to your activity. An example of an intent filter can be seen here where the share activity has an intent filter for receiving send actions of MIME type text plain with default category. Now let's take a look at using intent filters in Android Studio. In order to demonstrate intent filters, we created two modules which represent two separate applications in this project. In order to do that, we simply start our project as normal with a default application with the main activity as we've created in previous examples. Once the project is created, we simply need to select File, New Module, select Phone and Tablet Application, and then give a name for our application or library and our module name. In this case, we've called the module Intent Receiver. Let's start with the app module app. In our main app, we have a simple button that allows us to perform a callback called onButtonClick. In our callback, we create a new action dial intent and start it. As you can see, we give no specific package for this intent to start, so this would be an implicit intent. Android devices and emulators normally come with a default dialer app that allows users to make calls. This intent would be captured by that dialer app and any other applications that would like to register for the action dial. Now let's take a look at our second app, the Intent Receiver module, in particular the manifest for the Intent Receiver. In our main activity definition, we have the normal intent filter for main launcher that defines that the main activity is the activity to launch when starting the application. But we also have an intent filter for dialer default. So this would receive intents from any dial intents actions that are passed, as long as the user or system choose to pass it to this application. So let's start this application and see how it works. Since we have more than one module, we need to make sure that the Intent Receiver module is selected in our module selector. We can then click the play button to install it and run it on our emulator. Now we have the Intent Receiver application installed and running on the emulator with its simple title and text that says dial. So now let's go back in and take a look at our main activity for our first application again. Again, in our main activity, on our button click, we'll send an intent to the system for any application that can answer for the action dial action. So let's run our app application and see how it works. Now that we have our app module running, if we press the button, we can see that the app picker comes up and lets us pick an app we'd like to launch. And if we choose the intent receiver application, it will launch that application instead of the default dialer application. Thank you for joining us in this part of the lesson, and for this lesson on intent filters and intents. Join us in our next lesson where we'll cover the lab exercise for this section.